Welcome to the club.
It costs so much money to get the Crypt Keeper to record that very short segment,
Seriously.
but totally worth it. Welcome to the.
Well, he's got bills to pay too.
That's right. These are trying times for all of us.
That's right. It's tough in this economy. Welcome to the Culture, Language, and Art of the Worker podcast, The Claw. We do our own sound effects here. It is, I don't know, Sunday or something, the 12th of April. We are now the world leader in not only total cases of COVID-19, but also deaths, both by quite a large margin. USA.
We're number one.
Yeah. So that's going on. We're gonna try to bring something tonight that's a little. We're still gonna talk about class and power and these interactions, but do something a little less. I don't know. Serious.
A little more lighthearted.
try to
break it up a bit.
Yeah, have a little bit of a break because we all know what's going on. We're all following it. Anyway, I'm Sparks. I am the resident bear cub. I've heard that's a term that people use. And I'm feeling pretty today. How about you, Matt?
I'm Maddie, the resident sarcastic and sarcastic one. I'm feeling pretty today too.
Copycat.
Whatever. I mean, deny it.
And I'm Biff Tannen, and I hate manure.
Parker is calling tonight from a clandestine location, a bunker 30 fathoms beneath the sea. How's the pressure over there, Park?
Well, I had a few leaks early on. It's kind of just trial and error when you're under the sea. I'm more worried of the semi-amphibious fish creatures. I cleaned 3 out of the traps today.
What's that that fish sex movie that won all those awards?
Fish sex?
Yeah, the fish sex movie. Parker knows what I'm talking about. The sound of water, the taste of water.
Oh
yes,
The
yes.
The Shape of Water. I really liked that movie.
The Shape of Water. She has sex with the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
how far along that timeline would you say you are? Have you met any interesting and also kind of sexy creatures?
I haven't met with the mermaids yet.
Shame.
I think we're gonna have a few months of tenseness. Might taper off sooner. You know, I'm open.
All right, so
makes them big heads and human vaginas.
Yeah, it'll be like in The Lighthouse when it's just basically like a mermaid screaming at you.
I really like that.
With like a close up of like a
mermaid vagina.
Yeah, like a
out of nowhere, no warning.
Exactly what you think it would look like too.
Mm-hmm.
Well done. So just a hard segue into our subject tonight, which is going to be the themes of class struggle in horror and science fiction. We know we're not going to talk about your favorite thing, probably, or whatever. Feel free to write us angry emails or whatever.
Call in and yell at us.
Exactly. It will be funny. So you kind of sparked this conversation the other day. You wanna start us off and tell us kind of what you noticed? I mean, we could talk in broad terms, but we could get right down to the specifics of it.
Right. Well, last week, over the course of 2 days, I watched the first Friday the 13th movies. Something to do. But I noticed some things when I was going through it. I mean, obviously they're all they're a series, so it's going to have the same things going on. But there's like some things I noticed that are kind of weird, or not necessarily completely thematic with it. But more to that, I had a conversation with you about it, and that sparked another thing, which was basically Jason Voorhees is a interesting class analysis, as he was the child of a single working mother,
Respect.
and he would
Much respect.
Respect to the working moms.
right, and naturally you trust other people to help out, watch your kid, and something happens and Jason dies. She goes crazy. I think all moms would lose it if they lost their only child.
Yeah, I think it's a fairly natural reaction if like your kid drowns.
Yeah.
While like whatever horny counselors are supposed to be watching
him.
That like you might, I don't know, say
get a little angry.
Yeah. Do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, but I mean more than that. I mean, there's like the possibility they weren't even having sex. They just didn't give a shit because here's this deformed kid, running around.
Yeah, like who cares about the poor kid?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, he also had some, if not like special needs, like he was, deformed.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so that's the social outcasting and these these hierarchies, right? And combined with what I can only assume is like probably a poorly paid staff. In like a weird, easy to mismanage kind of social condition.
Moreover, this was the 50s. So.
Oh yeah, is that when it took place, or was supposed to take place when he died?
When Jason died, that was 58.
Yeah.
Or something like that.
That's interesting.
So like that would have been a problem in the 70s when the first Friday the 13th takes place. The present time, I should say. They would have probably had a problem then with a special needs kid. Then forget about it in the 50s.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As someone who has a facial deformation, I promise you, society is very accepting. It was no problem. People were just like, whatever, he's just like a regular guy. Let's be super chill. Yeah, it's awesome, man. What since you're the resident know-it-all here on this stuff, what like do they ever reveal like how is this investigated even? Like
Like
No,
after
they
he
didn't.
dies.
yeah, what's the kind of what happened post
Um,
drowning?
um, they don't. They just like chalk it off to like, hey, this kid drowned.
It
No
was an
big deal.
accident.
There you go.
Yep.
Yeah. You don't want that on, you know, on the camp's record.
Mm. Parents
Right.
will stop sending their children.
Yeah. It's like you know, when they're supposed to be supervising them and then kid drowns. The
They're
police
off doing sex in the woods.
the police are there to protect the interests of private capital, you know? So cool. So they investigated very thoroughly, is what you're saying.
Right.
And that's
Right.
why the mom was like, for no reason, I'm taking this into my own hands.
Yeah. I mean, she is like a little disturbed
Well,
anyway. So this just like pushes her over the edge.
yeah. I mean, what good does it do to be rational in an irrational world?
Right.
Sure.
But okay, so but the first movie, for instance, her like spree takes place years later. Yeah,
Yeah,
decades
what
later,
happens
even.
is they show Jason drowning, and then a year later, two counselors are killed
Okay.
who were having sex. And then I think it jumps ahead, like 20 years or so later, and they're going to reopen the camp, and that's kind of what triggered it again.
Stirred up his
It-
spirit.
Well, stirred up her. I mean, yeah. Yeah, she's crazy. She feels like she's channeling Jason, so
Mhm.
she,
In a way.
um, but they also mentioned, I forgot about this, but the reason the camp had not opened earlier because there was random things that happened, not killing people, like some arson, uh, chemicals in the water and stuff, which I'm guessing like were all attributed to her.
Yeah.
So the camp would not reopen.
That's interesting. It's like the plastics factory down the road from Camp Crystal Lake was leaking microplastics and all sorts of things into the water. Was
Can't open it.
is he's like a local kid too? Yeah, like he's
Yeah, well, actually, and this kind of goes in the backstory. Forgot where she was from, but she's not originally from there. Um, um, but she ended up moving there after killing her husband, and
Okay.
right, and to
Yeah.
raise her special need child.
yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, I mean, it hits several different kind of notes for sure. You know, not being able to, or not being taught to swim, and not following like, you know, safety protocols and all this sort of stuff. It's that backwards dream maybe that like a certain class of people are like, in my day, we didn't. They just threw you in the lake and you drowned or you
Yeah.
swam. We didn't have these
Right,
girly
right.
swimmy things on our arms. Nobody was watching us. We threw lawn darts at each other. That's how
Right,
your
right.
Uncle Brendan died.
We hit each other in the shins with our cocaine mouths.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It was just like, it was dangerous and awful. We should do that again. Yeah. So there's that. There's also what's that terrible one? Jason X
Which one was that?
Yeah, where he goes
in
to
space. Yeah.
Oh, I haven't
Jason
seen
in
that.
space. Aren't they're like some like resource extraction team, isn't it? They're like miners in space or something.
I'm because they were well, they're supposed to be teenagers, but of course they're 20 something or 30 something year olds. But they're supposed to be like having a class or something going on. So this is like a field
This is
trip
a
coming
field trip?
to
space?
poisonous Earth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like yeah, they recovered stuff because the teacher intended to sell the shit.
There you go. greedy. Well, see,
Teachers don't get paid very well.
yeah, especially in space.
Maybe we should
or
do
whatever.
something about that.
What's weird is there was a military group on board, which I thought was weird. I don't know if they just needed an escort to go to dead Earth or whatever. But
Well, I mean, you got cops in every school.
right, well, yeah.
Arresting children.
I guess
Well,
the
yeah.
the military would be in the school instead.
Right. Yeah. We have cops in school to protect the kids, but they're not protecting the kids, and they're like
Arresting them.
Arresting them
tackling
for having-
them.
yeah.
In this case, they're getting killed off one by one.
Yeah. So yeah, it's useless.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, there's I also like the idea of like I think there's something there that might be like not specific necessarily to these movies, but to a lot of things that's just like the unstoppable force that you can't bribe, you can't reason with, all these sorts of things. You know, it's you can't like you know, argue with it in the marketplace of ideas. You just have to
Right.
like survive
Yeah.
it. I I think that's, you know, worth kind of underscoring a little bit
Yeah.
because certainly like things like that exist. You know, it's not like there are Nazis in this country anymore or whatever.
Right. It's funny you bring that up because there was actually there's a couple of movies where somebody tries to bribe them to not kill them.
Yeah, how does that play out?
Yeah. So, you know, kills them, obviously.
I will get you a gold encrusted machete. I also
Here, take my money.
think
Take my money.
it's I think there's some like broad symbolism of death in that, right? Of like as a like equalizer in some ways. I'm not trying to like glorify it or anything. What I'm saying is like you know the banker, the camp counselor, the cop, the doctor, the CEO. They're all gonna meet the same fate if they interact with this thing. And you can't reason with it. You just gotta like set it on fire or something, right?
Right, yeah.
Well, and then there's that horrible remake where they like stumble upon like a weed crop.
Yeah. That was the initial thing was that those first campers were going out to look for weed. Like, swear to God, man, it's out here.
Yeah, and then
Right.
right, and then you have these poor weed farmers who are like protecting their
Right,
crop.
Right.
Yep, and get killed and get their hockey masks taken from them.
Yeah. You know, that's I actually there's a thing that's kind of constant through a lot of these movies is like I don't know if it's just because it's followed through Hollywood or what exactly, or if it's an easy trope to kind of play on, but like in movies like Your Wrong Turn, for example, or things of that nature, it's always like they pull into a gas station, right? In
Right.
this like one horse town, and it's always like the cool city kids,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
Making assholes of themselves.
Yeah. The middle class city kids like threatening the guy behind the counter and whatever.
Or just being a dick for no reason.
Yeah,
you know?
and like making fun of there's some classism in there.
Yeah, there really is.
saying, like these idiots.
Like, and the girls are always like, "Oh, it's gross and dirty."
Yeah. And then I do enjoy how that's how you're introduced to the characters in a lot of these movies, and then it's just like, they're ill prepared for the
for the weekend ahead.
well, survivalism.
Yeah.
And they're basically like, the next time the gas station people see them, they're like running,
Covered in
blood.
It's just one of them.
I
There
need a
was
phone!
6.
And they're like, this is neoliberal hell America. We don't have a phone. The payphone got shut off years ago, man.
Yeah.
And I mean that does become a trope actually, because in these initial ones, these people weren't dicks to the villagers. I guess you could call them. They weren't initially dicks to them. The villagers were dicks to them.
Yeah.
It's like, well, Camp Crystal Lake's cursed. Yeah, so don't go there. Or,
yeah.
Oh, well, I guess I gotta give you a ride out here.
Right. But I feel like that now, right?
Yeah, it's
Right.
if you want to go.
Let me paint a scenario for you that has no parallels to what we're going through right now. Okay. Some middle class privileged kids roll into your rural town in the middle while there's latent I don't know, danger. Maybe is the proper term.
Well, yeah, we'll just use that as the broad term.
Yeah, they're like, fuck danger, man. I'm trying to get out of the city, clear my head.
This is about me.
You're like, just get out of here. Turn right. You turn right back around. You go to wherever you came from.
Now.
Yeah, and they're like, weirdo, blah blah blah. I'm not listening. What an idiot redneck. And then what? 18 hours later, you're getting your skull peeled back. Should listen.
Fair enough.
Yeah. Or like being forced to eat your own fingers or something.
Yeah. If you're ever at a rural gas station and somebody walks up to you and is like, you need to get out of here.
You should get the fuck out of there.
Yeah.
Just go.
Regardless
Better safe than sorry.
Regardless of the context. Like, it's probably best to listen. We don't need ya. City slickers all up in here. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I do find that interesting how that's often a play in a lot of these things. It's like these very classist young adults who are then kind of taught an indirect lesson, maybe, but a lesson all the same.
Right. a lot of them fail.
Yeah. And or they'll like run to somebody's cabin, and that's the only. They didn't think to bring guns into the woods with them, and that guy's got a double-barrel shotgun. He's like, "Get out of here!"
Once their cell phone stops working, they're just like dead in the water.
Yeah, right. They don't know what to do except call the police.
Call for help.
But what if the police don't come? Or what if the
What if the police are who you're running from?
Well, I was gonna say, or like, what if this thing can't be stopped by the police?
Right. Yeah. There's 3 movies where the police were involved through the whole thing, and it didn't do it. Make a goddamn difference.
Naturally.
Well, if he was trying to rob a bank, they would have been on that, or like had parked illegally or something.
He was jaywalking.
Well, are you saying middle class white kids' lives don't matter?
I mean, only to the extent that there's pressure. more than many other lives, probably. That's not my opinion. That's just how society behaves. But yeah. But even so, it's not to do like preventative measures. It's just to make like sad Netflix documentaries about it later.
Yeah. He'd be like, look at this awful thing we did, and we're probably going to keep doing.
The tragedy at Camp Crystal Lake couldn't have been avoided. Of course, we could have closed it down.
But then we wouldn't have been able to make money.
We opened it up for this documentary.
Right. And that's the thing, isn't it? Why we keep having this problem is some rich fat cat sees this valuable property and it's like, I don't care what happened in the past. It's about the future.
Grisly murders.
Where do I sign?
I bet I could get it on the cheap.
Right?
Yeah, it's good stuff. I wish there was some, maybe you could tell me, but I don't remember there, but I wish there was some, especially in the Friday 13th movies, of like, some kind of even like momentary solidarity though, where it was like, I don't know, like the groundskeeper or something like that was like, Jason, man, it's me, like kind of in Halloween with
right.
with
I hated that part.
Danny Trejo's character, and he was like,
yeah.
Mikey,
I took care of you.
I'd like to see that in the or something similar in the Jason films, and just be like, not me, Jay.
Yeah.
I would have saved you from drowning. You know me.
Well, I mean, there's a couple instances in there that's like that, but then whoever's doing that fucking hits him with a machete.
Yeah.
I
I was gonna, maybe is he ever merciful? Is he really like, you know what, forget it?
No.
Yeah.
Just kills everything.
I you know what, as far as like classism, there's, you know what is kind of like the maybe the opposite end of that spectrum in terms of applying it directly to like a main character instead of it being like on the periphery, is Hatchet.
Ooh, which one's that one?
With what's his name?
Yeah.
Victor Crowley.
Yeah, Victor Crowley.
Yeah, and it's like, you know, it's all this like he was born in a one-room cabin to a witch with a black. I don't remember the movie, especially, but it's all this very like, this must be evil and horrifying. And, you know, it's a horror movie, and of course he's whatever. But it's like all this implied. Through like the scenery and stuff, and through his backstory, it's like, of course, this man became a murderer. You know, like he lived in a shack in the woods, and with no assessment of like material condition. Like that's all in Louisiana and stuff too.
Right, yeah.
So
in the swamp, or rough.
Yeah.
And the only person he knew was his fucking dad.
Yeah, maybe Victor Crowley just needed like a good paying job and like proper housing and healthcare and stuff.
Yeah.
We'll never know.
Isn't that what we all need?
We'll never know. Instead of the police rushing in every 5 minutes because some, dumb tourists decide to walk into the swamp and like throw rocks at a house. But yeah, that is that is the other end of that for sure. Yeah, I think there's also something to say Nightmare on Elm Street in terms of like mob mentality. Firstly,
yeah,
and that sort of like localized corruption and things of that sort. And I also think there's you could, the obvious case, right, is for like abuse and all these things or whatever. But also I think, one of the things, I'm not sure how much it's highlighted in the other movies, but one of the things I think is good that they did in that just really, really lame Freddy versus Jason was there's a lot of kind of themes around pharmaceuticals.
Right. Yeah. That was something I noticed as far as like drug use throughout the series. It was mostly marijuana, but cocaine popped its head up a few times, and heroin.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, but then we got that one, which has pharmaceuticals heavily influencing the entire thing.
Mm. Yeah, no, that was probably the only poignant part relatively of those movies is like these kids have been forced to like these external forces are being internalized these okay, so they're literally like being tortured essentially by the like demons given birth by their parents and the external society's like misdeeds combined with whatever. Like he wasn't a good guy. I'm not
Right.
saying that, but like this thing then is inherited through the community, and they're forced to essentially be tortured by this kind of whatever, like spirit or latent power, right? That
Right.
then they have to basically be chemically restrained.
Yeah.
Right.
In order to and be institutionalized.
Well, yeah,
basically, I believe in that movie just because, like, what?
I mean, of course they're institutionalized because that's going to be the best way to control this thing.
Well, or like you could get rid of the thing. See, that's what I'm getting at. Is
right. I mean, as far as that their half-assed way of doing it.
Right. But that's kind of my point. Is that's how society directs these things at us as you're the problem, and treating the symptoms rather than creating solutions.
Yeah.
And certainly like not to some extent like not believing in the totality of like the suffering and that sort of thing of individuals, making it about that individual and restraining them in that way
and invalidating whatever it is they're going through.
Yeah, invalidating, isolating. So there's like I don't know, I don't think they meant it to be so like cerebral and deep, but certainly there is something there, and I think it's worth noting because it was like they did a pretty good job with that.
Another franchise to look at that I thought about was Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yeah.
I mean, they're cannibals, but you think about what happened to make them that way.
Yeah, doesn't like the factory close down or something?
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's in the originals and the remakes. This entire town is basically dependent upon this one factory, the slaughterhouse, and it closes. And so everybody becomes destitute. And what do you do in your desperation? You start eating people.
Didn't it close because of like didn't something happen with their son at the factory? Like there was some incident?
Well, that was in one of those flashback movies, I think. He like attacked some guy for like making fun of him.
Leatherface's mom gives birth to him on the floor, and I think she died even. Then he gets thrown in the trash, as you do. Kind of baby on the floor. He goes to work there as a teenager, and then they get closed down. There's no reason why, just the industry, I guess. I don't know.
Right. Yeah, I mean,
somebody opened up a bigger factory in the next county, and he's a big fat cat.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's the volatility of it all, anyway, and certainly like centralized production. That's the volatility of it all. But yeah, it's interesting that it circles around that so much because that's so accessible, I think, for a lot of people, especially with something that then like pivots so hard into like our nightmares.
Horrific thing.
Yeah. It's interesting. But in all these things we see, it's a common theme in a lot of these things is how isolation turns people into, or like, I don't know, turns the right word, but certainly like causes the rapid decline of like our humanity. So these people who are
Right.
like on the precipice of
Yeah,
some
they're
sort of,
outcast or whatever.
right, and then they're essentially like deliberately strictly isolated, and then we see all these effects. You know, I think that's something Rob Zombie was trying to address with his remake um, of Halloween. You know, just the kind of like descent, or how the monster gets made. I guess in some ways.
Right, right. And I
Um,
mean, this is kind of like what this is the inspiration John Carpenter had was, he took a field trip to an institution and saw a lot of, um, people with, issues inside there, and that's kind of where he got the idea for the shape in the first place.
yeah,
So, I mean, I kind of applaud Rob Zombie in the sense that he like went back to that idea and went further by showing us like the descent,
yeah,
you know,
okay.
and everything. So, you know,
Yeah, and honestly, like just literally, that was their only strategy, right? It was just like, put him in a box,
Yeah.
and then at every level, you know, his mother, all these like things that are supposed to be grounding, and these social bonds that are supposed to be grounding and like you know, built on trust and these sorts of
Like a
things,
support system.
and how that begins to dissolve with that isolation and that you know, the dehumanization of it, being
right.
removed from even your most basic, I would say, like existential rights.
Yeah.
um, and how that only makes it worse, you know, like what, I mean,
Absolutely.
you know, we can speculate and whatever, and maybe it's worthless, but within this context, like, what would that child have looked like if he had actual? See, this is what I resent a little bit about movies like that. Is it's and horror needs to stop leaning on mental health so much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like a yeah, like it's cruel at this point a little
Yeah,
bit.
like it's gone overboard.
But there's got to be a way you can do it when you address really that, like, the you know, the fact of the matter is, like, if you look at that story, right, he's a child and he has some latent, you know, whatever,
Yeah, that's latent psychotic,
yeah, whatever,
tendencies
psychopathies
for
or
sure.
something, or you know, I don't know all the like terminology certainly, but some issues for
Yeah.
sure, right? And
Right,
and
right.
and those have mostly to do with his socioeconomic class, um,
Right.
and and all the effects that tend to come with the struggle of that. His mom's a stripper, which
Her
which is a precarious life. Her hours are tough. He's stuck with, you know,
an
this,
abusive.
right. None of this is to like blame anybody. What I'm saying is, let's talk about the material
Yeah.
conditions for a little bit.
This
You
is
know,
what life looks
there's the
like.
abusive boyfriend, right, who's on
Right, right.
disability. So he drinks and is violent. There's you know, his mom is a stripper, so her hours are terrible, and their life is precarious. But she's like doing everything she can for this kid, but he doesn't have the supervision. The supervision he does have is abusive
And he's getting bullied at school.
or neglectful. Yeah, there's no support system at any level here, other than his mother, and he's immersed in such a miseration and precarity. So what they tell us is then, like, of course you would become a monster, right? Okay. So, but I think that's a little unfair.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that lets those conditions that are completely avoidable off the hook, in order to make kind of an exploitative, um, uh, to develop kind of an exploitative theme where you say, like, you know, like, in the end, this is their fault. It seems like, because like at every step, people are like, "Just snap out of it, Mikey," and blah blah blah, and yet
just
just like,
stop being this way.
and
And that's how they treat a lot of people with mental illness.
yeah, well,
like all of them.
the dude just wants his mom around. He just wants to,
He
like,
wants to feel safe.
Yeah, there's all these things, and at every point he is just ungrounded.
Yeah.
So I really want horror to stop leaning on mental health so hard to create monsters because like it's damaging.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And B, I feel like there's a vastly more interesting story that doesn't get addressed in examples like that. It's a very interesting story, but then it's just like, yep. I think it fits too much of a poor narrative to be like, yep, our
It's kind of lazy at this point to
Yeah.
just be like, well, they had some kind of mental illness.
well, and I think if the point is to be like, this system is the monster, I
Yeah.
feel like you have to show that in some way, and that's what I mean. Like they never they never get to it.
Yeah.
It's always, and all right, whatever. It's a horror movie. It's all gonna be like hyperbolic and like accelerated to the highest level. But that's what I mean. If you're trying to make this kind of actual show of these things, like that was very close to having a message in it. And I think it falls flat on its face with how it tries to deliver. I think that would have been better as a standalone movie because and breaking away from that character.
Yeah.
Because then you don't have to follow those rules so much, or taking that character
Right.
and trying to do something
The latter
different.
half of the movie doesn't
Yeah.
have to be what the original Halloween was.
Right, exactly. So I think whatever. I guess you could make the case of like, they made the thing that brings their systems of control to a grinding halt. I guess you could make like a very like roundabout case for why, it's deeper than I'm saying, but I don't think I think you got to go on a long walk for that, I guess. But whatever, it's all right. That's why. Oh fuck! What was that movie? It was like Compliance or something like that.
It sounds familiar. What was it about?
Where that woman gets involuntarily committed, and then she's trying to tell them the whole time, like, I need to get out of here. This person,
Oh yeah, like
Yeah.
my stalker is after me.
Yeah.
And then he like had gotten a fake name and got a job there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think that's what it was called. I know what you're gonna bring up with that though.
Yeah, there's certainly some themes there of like not being able to escape. Go ahead.
I thought you were gonna say it, but one of the things I remember most about that was like one of the characters she meets who is also admitted into that like rehab facility or whatever, or maybe this is a different movie.
Go ahead.
But just like they address how like these hospitals make money off having their beds filled, so you have no hope of getting out until your until your insurance company stops paying.
Yeah, no, that was that movie.
Okay.
Yeah, it was this sort of idea is like once they got you, they got you. And I think that goes for a lot of these kind of isolating institutions, peripheral institutions. And that movie, I'm trying to find out what the title of it is, but no, it's not that one. But yeah, no, it's I will find out what it is, and
we will give an update on that.
Yeah, no, that's Compliance is the one of the girl working in the fast food place, and that guy like as a prank, whatever. Yeah, that's terrible too.
It's really fucked up.
But I think we have these kind of broad themes of like socioeconomic status and survivalism, and these sorts of things in and like What's unfortunate is like sometimes these things become like the monsters become the demons within these. So it's not, my analysis of horror as a genre wouldn't be purely that it's like always the genre that's like uplifting or trying to bring like the stories of necessarily working class people, but it certainly does like feature it quite a bit.
Yeah.
And some of these things are highlighted by almost trying to um, you know they're openly trying to be rude or dismissive or turn exploitative or turn these things into like oversimplified, like these people are monsters or these people are backwoods,
Yeah.
regressive, whatever.
Yeah, they're simpletons.
Yeah. But I think you see a lot of good themes of like at least the conflict between um, um, almost like parasitic communities within rural towns, external parasitic communities of like tourists within rural towns, and what you
Yeah,
see, like take Pumpkinhead for example, right?
yeah,
Pumpkinhead,
that's a good example.
yeah, Pumpkinhead. You got Ed Harley, whose little kid is just like playing right outside of like by a gas station or whatever. It doesn't matter. But he's run over by a bunch of like rich vacationers. Oh,
On their bikes.
yeah, on their dirt bikes. This little kid, and then the rest of the story about Pumpkinhead is this guy, basically like giving up his humanity to get back at them. And I think there we see a better example of what could be done with some of these things. It doesn't lean on mental health. I mean, it doesn't have to because it goes after the supernatural for sure. But what I mean is he struggles with this.
Yeah.
You see him um, have this impulsive, revenge moment where he goes to. I don't remember her name, but she's got some terrible name.
Goes a backwitch haggis.
Oh, that's good. That's good. But she sets the Pumpkinhead loose, and he starts, or whatever the thing is, starts attacking, these people he wants vengeance on, and he's struggling with the morality of that. Which I think is interesting. And then at the end, correct me if I'm wrong, Parker. Spoiler alert, he becomes the Pumpkinhead.
Basically, what's happening is he's essentially sold his soul to raise this demon for revenge.
Yeah, so it's like a Faust thing almost.
So they have a symbiotic relationship, and that's actually interesting. You're talking about him struggling with the morality. It's like they show this directly because he's experiencing killing these teenagers through Pumpkinhead's eyes.
Right, yeah.
So he's
It's almost like a drone.
Right. He's literally doing it in a sense. So that forces him to kind of struggle with the morality of it. Even though he was, and after doing it, he had already felt guilt about it.
Yeah.
And then he's going that step further. He's trying to go kill Pumpkinhead, but not realizing like they're the same at the point.
He was becoming Pumpkinhead.
Right. And we're approaching my point, which is that he ends up becoming the monster, essentially, not in a roundabout way, sure, I'm reaching a little bit, but becoming essentially the same or a worse monster than the one who initially set him on this path. And my evaluation of that would be that these systems, be it of violence, oppression, whatever, have this remarkable ability to reproduce themselves. And so what he's struggling with is how to break that chain how to end that cycle once it begins.
Right.
Because we're never really sure of our place in it, right? So I think that's what's interesting, is that sort of you know, the show of how, like, you know, random acts of violence connect to you know, actual systems of violence, actual, like, planned out things that then reproduce themselves into these larger things. I mean, you can make that case about any horror movie, I'm sure, but I think this does it in a very good way. I think because
right. And it's more direct.
Right, because of it's this thing he's like unleashing in a lot of ways. But it's almost, you know, it's got this Faustian bargain with it as well.
Right.
And that's, I don't know if it connects at all, but that's a great, you know, we ought to watch it again. But that you showed me that movie a while ago, and I would like to rewatch it. Is it just called Faust? It's like an update of that story. The guy gets like a special suit or something, like a demon. You remember what I'm talking about?
I think so. It was he have claws.
Yeah, he becomes like a demon of some sort through making a bargain. I forget what it was for. Maybe it was for like being able to get revenge or something.
Yeah. Yeah. If it's the same thing we're talking about, yeah, it's called Faust, Love of the Damned,
Okay.
and basically it's a lot like Spawn in a way.
Yeah, we're thinking of the same thing.
Okay, yeah. So he's going to commit suicide because he feels powerless against his attackers, and the fact that he lost his love to them. So he's feeling powerless. So he thought the only way to kill the pain was to kill himself. But in enters M, who says, "Hey, I got a better idea.
Come with Mr. Mephistopheles."
Right. Of course it's gonna happen. I give you revenge. That's cool.
Yeah. Oh, that fine print there? Don't worry about it. But I think that's you know, we see that's an underrated movie for sure, and I would check it out. But I think that's a interesting thing that's all over these sorts of monster movies or whatever you want to say, is how we have to make these deals with power, right? In order to, like, we have to bargain with power to obtain it for ourselves, right? And
right, or to fulfill something.
Yeah,
either way,
it's you know, this supplication narrative where you have to beg or pray to some sort of like deity,
or give up something,
in order to not be powerless. And then, like, we see what power does to you know, the protagonist or something, right?
Right.
Or what it does in general, which it corrupts, you know, mind, body, and spirit, right? So I think that's you know, definitely an interesting theme that kind of is in every horror movie. I mean, you know, it's in a lot of things, but it's all over horror for sure. I don't know how you can make like a monster thing without it. All right, we are going to take a quick break, and then maybe we'll talk about The Expanse for a minute.
Yeah.
Cool. Be right back. Yeah, okay. So, as far as I mean, there is we'll have to do a part two or something. But there is a class struggle all over science fiction. But what I really would like to talk about, because we haven't been able to talk about it yet, is the Expanse, and how its exploration of these kind of class struggles. What you have is essentially. Um, let's just say spoiler alert, because like if you haven't seen it, like I don't know what to say and not say, like whatever, dude, go watch it.
Yeah.
Click this off right now and go watch it. But you have this conflict between two essentially like superpowers on Mars
Right.
and on Earth, and then you have this exploited working class in the middle. Who I mean, there's a lot there, right? One of the things I like that they work into it is they have the tattoos of essentially it's representative of the scars that the first Belters or the original Belters um, got from the equipment that they had to use, like the breathing apparatus or something like that. It's like it's basically like essentially like a ring around the neck.
Right.
That's so the symbolism of that is really well done, and there's a lot there for sure. But also their kind of um, internal politics of revolution and struggle. And there's different leaders with different opinions, and you have this ongoing narrative of this kind of detective, let's say, who's supposed to be, I think, like the neutral arbiter of all of this, or certainly.
I would even argue he's kind of a connecting piece too, in a way.
Yeah.
Because he's following this trail, and the player is sort of picking up on his trail,
right.
And then they inevitably meet up.
I guess that's kind of what I mean, because it's all, especially in the first couple seasons, it's all very shaded by his experience. Because you're kind of following him around and getting, especially in the beginning, you're getting a sense of the world through his kind of interactions with things. So I think he's supposed to be like a de facto narrator in a lot of ways, which is interesting because it's definitely not your like classic like detective noir story.
But I mean, it definitely has that feel, especially as he's wearing like a fedora.
Yeah, fedora. Yeah, no, it's well done. It's got enough kind of like callback, so that you're like, okay, this is what they're doing, and it's likable in that way. But it definitely like plays on it enough, or doesn't try to adhere to like tropes and the usual things you would find in this. Although there certainly are some.
or it's slightly different, because usually in like a noir story, you're starting out with a female coming in and saying, give them a job, but it's the female was the job in this, and tracking her down.
Right, and it's this like, I don't know, unstoppable power that is like ultimately unveiled, that kind of creates this almost mutually assured destruction, because like Mars and Earth are both trying to like dominate for control of the belt, essentially, which is like the resource extraction.
Right, so that's why else would they want it?
Right, so you have these. There's a lot of sci-fi with like Elysium and stuff like that, where it's like one kind of unified in terms of like locality, certainly. uh, upper class, elite class, ruling class, that kind of makes this other subjugated class below do everything, and all the danger is incurred by them, and they're essentially, essentially slaves, or just um, use. And we see
it's wage slavery,
right, and
because they're hired to do this job or whatever.
yeah,
They're probably not getting close to pay what they should be.
Yeah. I don't know if it gets into that, but it certainly kind of touches upon it as he's interacting with these things, because they're like almost like right before a revolution on the belt,
Right,
right?
right.
Especially as it begins. Um, and
Well, I was mainly talking about in like other sci-fi stories. Like Aliens is a good one because they're paying, like, not that I support like military operations or anything, but it's like they're paying these Marines to be going in because they've got this objective to get an alien egg or alien DNA or whatever, and
yeah, well, like aliens, like if Pete Buttigieg would have worked for Whaling Corp, like 100%. That's what that dude was doing. It's like all this resource extraction, like that shit is so fucking relevant to the exploitation of like global markets or like global resources, certainly. But it is interesting, if we're talking about Alien for a second. That this unstoppable and adaptable thing is able to kind of halt that right in its tracks. And one thing I think I would like to see in one of those movies is less the kind of like glorification of the struggle to overcome that, and more of the understanding of like um, what the real evil here is, and kind of maybe it's just me, but like kind of the beauty in the simplicity of the creatures, and how like adaptable and powerful they are and able to withstand this thing that's just taken for granted. Like we own everything, the galaxies and blah blah blah. We go wherever we want. We take whatever we want. It belongs to us. And then this, hyper adaptable creature is able to just tear that shit to shreds. You're useless.
Right, and I mean, I think that's the point. Is like, no matter how prepared. I mean, look at Alien Resurrection. They were like, they had these things in cages and shit, and thought they had control over it. What happens? Same thing every time. But I mean, it's interesting the obsession that they have to want to control something so adaptable.
Yeah.
Humans want to control everything.
Right. I mean, I think that's why I do like Prometheus and what's the other one there?
Alien Covenant.
Covenant, yeah. I think they had some good things to offer in terms of like diverging from the kind of simplicity of the original plot lines, which was good. But is it so wrong? Tell me if I'm off base here, but I just want to see one where the alien's the hero. Is that so wrong?
I mean, at this point, I don't think so.
Yeah,
not at all. I think there's a bit of a divergence in the series. There is like we're talking about in the first set of movies, we have a lot of corporate greed going on. Capitalism, whatever. And then in these movies, we got another we got another type of people going on, which probably helps fuel, if not is just the byproduct of it, is this quest for immortality.
Yes, yeah, right. That's more the later movies, yeah, is because I have to rewatch those movies, honestly, but it has to do with the AI and and the android, I guess David, right? Whatever.
Yeah.
And then they ultimately find out like that Wayland dude is alive, I believe.
Yeah, and he wants to track down uh,
These like
an engineer.
forerunners. Yeah.
Track down engineers like make me young again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Because I have all the money.
Yeah.
I control you.
And then aren't they just like,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
and you die. See, I like that. Okay, so this is a great thing. I would like to see something that's more clarified on this point. Okay, we have in that instance, right? Um, we have a hyper capitalist, for profit, imperialist colonizer kind of space program, whatever you want to call it, intergalactic
Right.
system, okay, of exploitation. And then we have this almost like forerunner, what they're called engineers.
Yeah.
Engineer, class, essentially, which seems they're like hive-minded and collectivist, at least in some ways, or certainly have collective power and collective strength. Even if I'm sure there's like hierarchies or whatever subtle stuff between them, it's not a perfect narrative there, but this like collective power is absolutely what it would be necessary to truly be that kind of more powerful, more far-reaching thing. And then you have this very individualist, send the pores to go die so I can then contact the engineers, right?
Yeah.
Once they've all fallen, me and my robot will go have a chat with them. And I do like that they're just like,
yeah.
turn them to jelly. I think that's great. I think it's good. But also, there's what I really liked in those movies was they have the kind of I think they're like mercenaries or whatever. Maybe two of them are scientists, but in Prometheus, certainly, they have these two scientists going around that like ring that they find, that like
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
yeah, they're like basically once the things start attacking or they get kind of scared by the whole thing, they're just like, I'm not dying for this.
Yeah, they're like bail.
Yeah, and then no, you you die for that, and it shows kind of like the coerciveness of this kind of system very well, where it's like you're meaningless. Do this thing so this guy can live forever, and there are no parallels between our current system and that. Yeah. No.
And I mean, I guess it's the same thing in The Expanse, really, because not only are they trying to use the protomolecule as a weapon, they're also trying to use it to alter their own DNA so that they can live longer.
Yeah. So there's some. Yeah, we'll have to focus on sci-fi because we haven't even gotten to like, Star Trek or Star Wars, which sucks a bag of dicks, but these sorts of things, which are probably the main, I don't know, main players in the sci-fi category, certainly in terms of like cultural. I don't know about importance, but maybe important. But yeah, let's do a part 2 of this sometime. But yes, you're going to get with horror and sci-fi, you're going to get a fair amount of, if not direct class analysis, being able to build off some of these things.
Yeah.
And see kind of like the material conditions of things laid pretty bare at the very least. It's not this romanticism in a lot of ways, even though again sometimes they romanticize like privilege, I think, or illness to a certain extent, or maybe not romanticize illness so much, but kind of hyperinflate it, demonize,
Right.
I guess. Would be. So it's it's all hyperbolic anyway. Like there's no movie like movies that are understated are rare. They're good, but they're rare. But yeah, so we'll do another one. But yeah, anyway, we will sign off here. Any final thoughts, Mr. Parker? Mine are that Star Wars sucks and give up on Star Wars. Goodbye. Canceled.
Fair enough. Gotta strangle the sci-fi and we'll let go.
Yes, there's so much better. Go watch Dune and then tell me Star Wars is good. Fuck out of here. All right. Everybody stay safe and peace, comrades.